So, one of the big things I think is tenant retention. What does your
Oh,
company do to keep tenants in place? Because we know that turning tenants is expensive. So, what do you guys do to keep tenant retention?
Phil, I think a lot of the just being in this field, everything goes back to communication. Everything goes back to how you treat your tenants. And one thing I always we pride ourselves on the fact that uh, I believe we're at like 89% of our tenants have been with us 2+ years. And before COVID, it was even higher than that. And I believe it's because the way in which we treat our tenants. If you treat people with respect and care, it is naturally reciprocated back to you. And management styles can be so vastly different. You can have a property manager that focuses strictly on the numbers, but treat the tenants with disrespect. And even if that tenant is a paying tenant, they're not going to stay at that property because they don't feel heard, they don't feel seen. So you really want to make sure that your management company has the value system that builds a rapport with the tenants, because the rapport is what causes the tenants to want to stay. You want to make sure that your tenants feel like this is their home, that this is a teamwork type of effort, and those tenants will stick around time and time again. And then even if they leave, they come back to you. It happens to us all the time. I have people that leave for jobs, and then 3, 4 years later they call and they're like, I used to live at 571 Farmwell. Do you guys have anything available? I want to be with your management team. So that speaks volumes. So just caring about people and making sure that your manager puts people first.
That's some very good advice because tenants, people overlook the value of the treatment that you give a tenant, which leads me to the next thing. How do you keep your tenants happy with your repairs and maintenance? How do you go about, handling them so that they feel satisfied?
You have to make sure that your management team has a system in place to deal with small repairs and large repairs. One thing with large repairs or emergency repairs, you need to say, "Hey, how do you guys treat emergencies? Do you have protocol in place?" And don't let them just tell you, "We do." Say, "Okay, what's the protocol if a tenant calls at 2 a.m. and say that my water heater is leaking? Do you, at the lease signing, did you identify the water shutoffs in the unit for the tenant?" Small things like that helps to ensure that, a small issue don't turn into a much larger issue. So you want to make sure that the property management team has the ability to accept written repair requests. I
Okay.
put much emphasis on that because tenants will oftentimes say, "Oh, I told Becky. I called into the office and I told Becky." And that's fine. We allow our employees to take a call, but we always say, "Hey, but we need you to put this in writing so we can have specifically what was needed and also be able to go back to that," because tenants will oftentimes say, "I reported something," and they did not.
From an
Um,
owner's perspective, I'm always concerned about staying on budget with repairs and maintenance. How does a new owner stay on budget? How do you help them stay on budget?
with each one of my clients, I make sure, well, I think my goal is always to save them money, even if they're like wanting to spend it all. And I'll tell them quick, like, we don't need to do that. But I treat all of my staff know, you have to treat these properties as if they were your own. Treat this owner money as if it was your own. You wouldn't be as quick to pull out a checkbook if it was your property. So you may have some tenants that are just kinda nitpicky and always wanting this little thing and that little thing. We will try to couple repair requests so that you're not constantly going out to a property, every week or every month for small items. We minimize the visits to the property. We also build that rapport with the tenant so that they take stock in the property, and we'll say, we don't come out and change light bulbs. That is a tenant responsibility. We found that a lot of owners were spending money on things that are small, such as, "Oh, my front doorknob is loose." We'll send a quick video to the tenant on how to tighten your doorknob or how to check your breakers. We want them to be vested into the unit so that it minimizes the cost to the owners.
That's good. I found over the years, I've had many, many management companies and managers like yourself who treat the property like it's their money have worked out the best for me because the ones that just get one estimate and okay, I
Yeah.
find I spend so much more money. So you said a key thing there that I think all new people getting in understand that their management is going to treat it like their own, you know?
Yeah, even one part of our process, I kinda laugh when I say it, but we were hiring people that were homeowners you at some point, and everyone on our staff, currently, everyone on our staff owns a home, and just that little piece, it does so much more because what I was finding is that the individuals that were renters, and nothing against renters, but it's just a different mindset. When you're a homeowner, oh, my AC broke. Now I have to spend $6,000 on a unit. A renter is like, the AC broke. I just called someone. It doesn't hit the same. And so what I was finding is that though the employees that never owned a home, they just didn't quite get the expense structure of things as much as the people that, actually had
That's
a
a
property.
very good tip. I never even thought of that. That's something I wouldn't even thought of, but that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's a different mindset, a
It's a
tenant
different
versus an
mindset.
owner.
For
They
sure.
look at
For
things
sure.
differently.
For
So
sure.
what
And then also have a I'm sorry.
go ahead. No.
We also have a policy where we will get 2 to 3 bids for HVAC repair, water heater repair, plumbing line repairs. You don't wanna always go with your first bid. You wanna make sure that you're, speaking to the vendors and getting details of the work that's being done so that when you are comparing bids, you're actually comparing the same work and not just one vendor will tell you, "I'm gonna replace your line for 30 grand," or whatever the case may be, but they don't go into detail. And another company may say, "I'll do X, Y, and Z," and go into all this detail, and it could be a little bit more, and you're thinking, "Well, this guy's only gonna charge me 30,000," but they didn't disclose that they're not going to, reseed the grass and, come out and make sure that the area is watered and covered with hay and all of those things. So just always getting details on your bids can save you a lot of money as well.
Clearly, your experience gets you to that point, and that's some good information right there. Now, always you're going to have tenant complaints or tenants that don't get along. How do you handle those situations so that you have a harmonious situation with these tenants?
Tenants that don't get along can be quite interesting. We have some crazy stories about tenants that don't get along, but I always just try to encourage tenants to, speak with one another, kind of sort out the differences. I've actually sent staff to a property and I've set up the evaluations to be at the same time for the two units that are always at each other's head. And I'll say, you know, see if you can get them to meet outside and introduce themselves and say, "Hey, my son, I know that he runs a lot and you can hear him, playing. We're not trying to, keep you up at night." Sometimes you just have to get the people to understand that this is another person too. Humanize the situation and get them talking, and they'll realize that they actually can get along. But then sometimes you have issues where no matter what you do, somebody can just be a negative Nancy and they're never going to get along with anyone. We definitely try to, you know, diffuse any arguments. But if in the event that the police need to be called, we always say, ensure your safety and your health and well being and call the police if needed. But, we will try to go in there and just make sure that, hey,
You as you're speaking, an idea came to mind. When new tenants are moving in, do you have them meet the tenant next door and the tenant next
yes,
door kind of like
yes, we do. And that makes me think of this. We have a quad where we had 3 units that they have been there for 10 plus years. And the lady downstairs moved out and they were all like, "Who's gonna be our new neighbor?" They were, everyone's on edge because they know everyone. They've been living together, for all of these years. When Ronald moved in, I placed Ronald from another. He was at one of our other properties that was being sold. He wanted to stay with our management, so I put him in one of our other units. When Ronald was moving in, we took Ronald and introduced him to everybody and, everybody and said, "Hey, this is Ronald. This is what he does." And they was able to build that rapport right off the bat, and it's been smooth sailing ever since.
Okay, okay.
That'll be a
Now
now that will be difficult when when you have like, it wasn't as easy in this 10-unit building that we acquired last year, but you try.
yeah. Okay, here's a more difficult question. How do you handle owner complaints?
I'm fortunate. I don't get a lot of owner complaints, and I believe that's because of the management style that we have, the transparency. We are a team. We're a team. That's how we look at it. We're staying in constant contact with the owner. I understand the owner goals. The staff understands the owner goals, and the owner also understands, what we are here to do. A lot of times, a owner complaint is because they have assumed, that a process will go a certain way, and perhaps my property manager didn't disclose like that. It oftentimes goes back to what did we do in the situation where they weren't aware of how this could go. So you just try to diffuse this situation, make sure that everyone is being transparent, with receipts on the repairs at the property, timely reports of accounting. Every time a tenant pays, our owners get, a notification that this unit has paid. The management agreement is really where you're really going to be able to diffuse a lot of issues, because the management agreement should outline all expectations that, the owner should get for the property.
Okay. So good communication.
Good human communication goes, for the tenant and the owner. If you're communicating, you'll have people, it'll be your sweet spot.
That's good. That's good. How do you keep in abreast in compliance of all the laws that come about and how to handle those? How does your company go about that?
Well, we're all also licensed agents, all property managers, everyone is licensed. So not only do you have to, keep up with your mandatory license law, we also have our staff to do additional classes that may be offered by our local chapters. And we just try to keep our pulse on what's happening in the areas that we're managing properties, whether that be with a particular city changing codes in relation to how many occupants can be in a certain number of bedrooms. You just want to keep your pulse on what the local government is doing as well, and always making sure that you're staying compliant to state laws if you're licensed.